Hi everyone, I'm Siris Rivas-Verdejo, and this is Choosing a Different Future. Thanks so much for checking in with us. I have a lovely repeat guest, one of my best friends. So excited to have him back on. Anytime we can chat, it's always a treat. I hope you enjoy this chat as well as the last one. Hi, John. Welcome
Hey, sister, how you doing?
back.
How's life?
So this is John Ashford. John, you are where in the world right now?
I am in Camas, Washington, right outside of Portland, Oregon, right across the river. I am, you want to talk about what I'm doing?
Whatever you're doing, yeah. So since the last time you were on the show, what have you
Oh my
been up to?
God.
Because a lot has changed. It's been like almost a year, I think, right?
Yeah. So the biggest piece that's changing my world, I have a bunch of projects that I'm working on, but my largest love right now is I'm writing a book.
Yay! You mean like the book that we talked about you writing in the last episode? You were
Yes,
like, when's the book coming out?
yes, yes,
Yes. Do you hear it, everyone?
yes,
Yes, it's
yes.
coming. Okay.
Um,
What's it
and
about?
when you wedged me with that,
A little bit.
like you were one of the first people who were like, book. And then somebody else, one of my friends, Antoine Stoudemire, he said, you need to write a book. And then I was on the phone with Gary Douglas from Access. He said, why don't you write a book? I think you'll make a lot of money on a book. And so I was just like, okay, three people that I dearly love said, write a book. So, okay, let's get busy with it. And then I went back to my friend Majestic because I never wrote a book. And I said, well, how do you write a book? He said, did you go to school? I was like, yeah, I went to school. He said, just start writing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was laying in bed one day upstairs with Tori, and I was thinking about, oh my God, what do I want to write about? And I kept on getting these stories, and I would wake up and put notes down on these stories about all the things that happened. I was like, well, what's the purpose of this book? Oh my God, the purpose of the book was to leave. I get to retire after 30 years of working in the juvenile department for Multnomah County in Portland, Oregon. I was like, what do I want to leave behind? I decided I want to leave a map on how to engage families and young people in difficult times, to have,
Mm.
to have them be able to select a better way of living. That's my number one goal. And I said, well, how do you do that? You tell stories. So I went back from when I was a youth minister, when I first came here for the Catholic Church for Portland, and I started meeting with all of these young people. Now these young people are in their 40s now. And I'm
Right.
like, oh my God, they were like teenagers when I first started. They're in their 40s. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of bizarre.
That's
And
kind of awesome.
yeah, they started giving me stories about what changed their lives that I had no fucking clue about. It changed their lives dramatically. This one guy came to me and said, I got to meet with you. I got to tell you something. I'm like, okay. And he told me, do you remember this talk? And I was like, tell me more. Where you told me that I couldn't come to a group because you were trying to get more African Americans to show up. And the way you did it, it wasn't racist or anything. You explained to me what it was needed and that you needed me to come in at a later point, but you need to grow this group over here and then mesh it. So he said, that changed the way I looked at my life. It's
Wow.
for the rest of my life. And I was like, oh my God. Then I started going back and looking at all the stories I had the young people write when I started reading Being You Changed the World by Dr. Dane Heer. And those young people are on my Facebook page now, and they actually always are giving me information and sharing. I'm like, well, wait a second. In the middle of doing this work, there are stories that might be able to help other teachers, other probation officers, other administrators on what does it take to engage a young person to change.
And also parents. I mean, you've worked so much
Yes,
with parents, right?
yes,
And one of the things I love is that it's not going to be by using these stories, the stories will illustrate the tools, the strategies without it being like a lecture.
yes,
Like they'll be able to just
yes,
tap into the energy of it. They'll be able to get, okay, these are some of the aspects of this that I can incorporate. And some of these other ones is just like, that's just unique to you. But they can
yes,
pick and choose from this, for lack of a better way to put it, like the buffet of possibilities that this book can be. And it's like, well, what's going to work given the type of the situation and child, because there's so many
yes,
different scenarios.
yes,
And you're not going to apply one to another necessarily, like one
yes,
tool to this other one. It's you. One of the things that I love about you is not only with the youth that you work with, but with everyone, you are like, what's required with this person?
Right.
And you tailor it all to that person. And I think
Yes.
that's, if you haven't already looked at that, that seems to be one of those overarching themes throughout the whole book as well, is, okay, let's not actually have this formula where you apply it to all the different youth in your life. Nope.
Yes.
That ain't gonna work.
Nope.
They will tell you right
Immediately.
away.
That's bullshit. They will call you out.
They will call you out, right? They'll be like, nice try. Nope. Even if some of the stuff does apply to them, funny enough.
Yes.
Even they'll be like, I see what you're doing and how you're trying to put me in this box.
Yeah.
And they resist that dynamically. I mean, I have that even with the younger kids, let alone the older ones that you work with.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the biggest pieces out of this is like, as I keep on writing, different stories come up. And I was thinking about why I even decided to be a probation officer. My first goal to be a probation officer, which was like in the middle of the book right now. I don't know if we're going to move it or not, but the story was I wanted to offer, coming from Chicago, going to school in France, working for Club Med, living in the Caribbean, I wanted to offer Black boys a sign that you can do things totally different if you choose to, regardless of where you come from, what's your background. Now, I didn't come from this, I wasn't a gang, I wasn't that, but I wanted them to see, because a lot of times people think that you can't do something, especially Black boys, and I was like, no. And then my perspective started to expand. I was like, well, wait a second. This is for more people than that. But that was my intentional goal, because I wrote that down and I've looked at what's happened in my life. I was like, wow, how has this grown? How is this like, I haven't changed that, but I've expanded it.
Well, one of the things I love about what you're saying, it kind of reminds me of, I don't even remember this. We used to talk about like representation of people of color in movies and media.
Yes.
And until recently, a lot of the excuses and justifications that were used for not having people of color in movies and in media and TV shows was, a lot of the executives would say, well, not everyone's going to go to that. It's too much of a niche. And I was like, well, if white people aren't too much of a niche and all the different people are watching theirs, what if there were some, crossover themes that apply to all of us that would be a pull? And so now you're seeing a lot more movies that have people of color in the foreground that are the leading characters. And all these people, no matter what their backgrounds are watching that. We've talked about it with the comic book movies, of course.
Yes.
And those, and the crossover that way. But on top of that, there's been like dramas as well now, historical pieces that people are pulled to see, even if it's not about someone that looks like them.
Right.
And so it's what I love about that is it seems to have someone of color, like the youth, the Black men that you work with, as maybe the leaders.
Yes.
Right. But then it still includes everybody else in the dialogue and invites them to consider how this could apply to their lives, how this, be it in their interactions with Black youth, but also for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, there's, especially since so many of them are teenagers, young adults, any teenager, young adult that reads this could maybe resonate with some of this. Any parent, anyone who is struggling with connecting with youth, period. Anyone who's been defined and projected and expected anything of them, and they've outcreated it, or they're trying to outcreate it. This is all in your book. And this is everything that I always knew was going to be in your book somehow. And I'm still waiting for the details. I still am waiting for the copy. I was like, where is it? Where's my copy? Come on. Right here.
It's so weird, because what's happening in the process of writing this book is making me reflect on what was going on in my world at the time.
Yeah, I bet.
When I went through my divorce, well, what was going on when I was raising my children myself, and what I was doing with the kids at work. What was I doing with families? Why did I get into doing men's work with Savalti? That bloomed like crazy. I used to come in and I taught the curriculum for the fatherhood program and domestic violence for African-American men getting out of prison or jail. And what happened is I went back to the creator of this organization, Tim Logan. I said, Tim, I I took a break. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not going anywhere for me. I needed a break. And I came back and I was like, Tim, I understand that you have to meet with them for a year and a half. Well, I want to introduce to them another way of being. He said, what are you talking about? I want to introduce consciousness to people who know something about it, but never really thought about it. And he said, what are you talking about? I want to talk about why a relationship might not work because vulnerability has not been experienced by itself. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait. So I said, so he went back and looked at the curriculum. He had said, man, John, everything you're talking about, choice, I can actually fit this in. And so I was nervous as hell because the first time I was in the room, it was all these guys. So they're sitting there like this. So this is another project I was working on with Savalti. So they're sitting like this. And I came in and we talked about NFL football and the way football, the S college league is made from all previous slave states. They were like, what? I was like, and how come men are going through the same experience over and over again without choosing something different because a condition?
Rewind a little bit and go a little bit deeper as to what you're talking about. Because I know we've talked about this, but go a little bit into the slave states and how that led into some of the NFL leagues. And yes.
So a year ago, I went to a plantation, my first time in business plantation in Louisiana. And by going to this, I was walking through the plantation and this guy was giving a story about it. And he was talking about how slave males, or females too, were bred like cattle. Mm-hmm. And they were bred for bulky strength, big guys to be able to move hard labor. Well, when you look at the SEC in college football, they win football all the time. But that league has had breaded men in it from the beginning. So of course, they would have a better selection of athletes because you're selecting from this 400-year process. Mm-hmm. So when I started telling them that, they were like, oh my God. And I was like, and sometimes it's even bred out of choice because you still put the plantation mentality in there. So you're implanting somebody with a way of thinking.
Yep.
And so it falls out in their life afterwards. And so you're like, well, how come they broke after making all this money? Because they've never got anything other than this information of being on this plantation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the guys were just like, and so I said, ask a question. So now that we know this, what can we choose differently in our relationships? Now, most of you guys have come here because of domestic violence. What aren't you willing to look at in your relationship that is probably passed down or implanted to you from the past that you had no idea of? And now
what are some of the things they said?
What's that?
What are some of the things they said?
Quiet. The room was quiet. And almost the point,
just taking it in.
Because the point of it is that I didn't get to the vulnerability until like recently. We guys started getting into vulnerability this year. And even that aspect of like, when we looked up the word vulnerability, they always described it as a weakness. Well, they've been in prison.
Yeah.
You can't be that vulnerable in the jungle with lions and tigers and bears. I mean, you really can't be that vulnerable.
Depending on how you're defining and how you're looking at vulnerability.
Yes.
But given how we look at it with consciousness,
yes,
that's absolutely the place you need to be more vulnerable.
Exactly. Exactly. And so when I start to introduce that concept, because we looked at the Webster Dictionary.
Yeah.
I went into to bring some of my information that I have and some of the information from Access, and we blend the two together. And once again, there wasn't tears, but you saw brothers that were sitting like this. They were eventually this. It was doing like this. They were doing like this.
And I love how you just demonstrated that, because that's literally one of the things that I'm looking at in my book, and how you can see vulnerability in male bodies show up differently. And that's one of them, is this like lean in, they take it in, they've integrated, they go there, and then they all of a sudden their whole like body says open, like they actually have limbs open, legs open. That's them being, but when they're all of a sudden don't want to receive you and they're trying to block it out and their walls are up, their arms are crossed, they're looking down, like it's you can see it so in the physicality, not for all male bodies, but a lot of them. And you just did it. I love it. You just did it so much. So could you succinctly talk about that melding of what vulnerability looks like from the Webster's dictionary and what you've incorporated in from Access Consciousness and your experiences with playing with these tools with these youth?
Yeah, so with these guys, one of the pieces that I want them to get we looked at the origin of the word because I've been working with them because they like rap and they talk about hip hop, and I was like, Tupac was one of the greatest word crafters on the planet.
True story.
And I was like, I bring the dictionary with me. I bring a Webster dictionary with me and I pass it around so they look it up, and then we go through the entire definition of a word, where it comes from an adjective verb, because I'm trying to get them to start looking at things a little bit different academically. Then I pull out another resource I have from Access about some stuff for vulnerability. And then I ask them, who taught you about vulnerability? And what did that look like? And do you know anybody who was vulnerable in your world? And so what happens is that these satellites start floating around orbiting around their head. And they're looking at them and they're like, oh. And before you know it, they're actually able to pull the information out of each one of the satellites and use it for themselves. Now, of course, not all.
Wow.
I had 15 guys, and we went deep into vulnerability again, and probably 13 of them went deep.
Yeah.
Because what they were able to do is take the information and make it their own. And we talked about what it's like to be male, not just black male, and what vulnerability looks like, and how come we don't see signs of that in society. And then you add on the different aspects of what your skin looks like, which changes it, and why you're in this class called domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
Because
one of the things I love about what you're saying is you didn't just give them what vulnerability is.
Mm-mm.
You walked them through this journey so that they could start discovering what it could be like for
Mm-hmm.
them and how it's going to be different for each of them. Like that is so much more effective, impactful, empowering. And that they also can still keep evolving with it, that it's not going to be this stagnant, rigid thing. I think that's really key, because I think a lot of people, for all these different things that we're talking about, have a very, like, they get stuck with it and they want to keep it in a certain way, maintain this identity of it, the identity of themselves with it, how they interact and relate to it, instead of being like, what if it keeps dancing with you and you keep seeing how all the different ways it can show up. And just because vulnerability showed up or wasn't showing up in your life for however long that was, and it's starting to show up now, it can keep shifting.
Because one of the most interesting pieces was when I got to the point, I asked them how many had children, and then they raised their hands. I said, well, how many of you have daughters? How many of your daughters do you want them to have a man that is different than what you created for their mom? And what would that look like if they were able to understand what vulnerability came from your perspective? And the buy-in was immediate. Mm-hmm. When it's yours, you're willing to look at it and start to create something different for yourself. And at the very end of the session, I mean, it's crazy. Like the cool thing about, since I've been entering the room and bringing in this consciousness to the room, Tim said to me, man, John, we need to have you here more often. These cats want to take off at 7 o'clock. At 7:15, 7:20, we still rolling when I'm bringing this consciousness information to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, it's the most exciting thing that I've ever seen, because I was nervous. I was like, are they going to be able to receive this? What I need? And what I've learned about myself is being willing to use any tool at any time to create a space that questions can pop up and opportunities and possibilities can pop up for them to choose. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the pieces that tie back to my book. If you're going to work with people, period, you have to be willing to show up for whatever's needed at the moment. Mm-hmm. Now, I know people are like, well, how do you do that? I was like, and I'm trying to get the notes, and it's kind of difficult. Like, how do I do that? And a great deal of it, I think, is being, and there's some stuff that comes in from Access, but being aware. I always talk being intuitive, but I never thought of it that way. I was just like, well, that's how I thought everybody did it. But it's the point of really being present. I think that that's one of the things that I'm gathering from a lot of the young people, even from the youth group, from the book. John, you were always you were willing to spend the time, you were willing to ask the question, you were willing to show up, and sometimes not say anything at all, just sit with somebody. Mm-hmm. So that's been like my two loves that have developed so far through this year. And thank you for the wedgie for the book.
I got another one for you. You ready?
What's that?
So when are you going to create the class that people can go and find and interact with wherever they want to interact with it?
Okay, so my other wedgie you pushed me to. So I decided that I am going to become a CF for the experience. I want that experience of that. So I'm going to home. We're getting our plane tickets this weekend. We signed up. Everything's taken care of for the
it's
CF.
It's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Enjoy the food. I have so many photos of food.
Oh yeah. So,
and for those that don't know, what he's talking about is being a certified facilitator for access consciousness. That's what the CF in this context means.
Yes.
We have CFs in speech language pathology, which means their clinical fellowship year. So I just got to distinguish.
Gotcha. But yeah, so I decided to bite off from that, because one of the things that I don't know where I will go with things, but my entire life I've been collecting. I have a utility belt of living.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realize is that every utility on this belt has a special need. It's a greater resource to broaden my awareness so I can be more present and effective with whoever I meet.
Mm-hmm.
And I took out, because for a while I was looking at just access conscious stuff. It's like, oh, this is the key. This is the ring, like Lord of the Rings. And I realized, no, this is another tool.
Yeah.
This is another tool that will allow me to be more effective with people. And I've had tons of tools. And so I talked about this because it's kind of funny that I say this. This year's been really weird, because what I've looked back is that when I look at being 56, I just turned 56 this year, and I looked at, okay, my parents were my first influence. Then the next big influence was going to the Catholic Seminary for 8 years. Then I went to Club Med. But before Club Med, I went to school in France. Then Club Med. Then I was a youth minister. Then I was in legal system, a probation officer. Then I went to IFA, Santeria. What else did I do? Then there's a lot of different
Qigong too.
Qigong, yeah. I've been practicing Tai Chi and Qigong. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I got a black belt in Taekwondo. And I'm like, oh my God. So how can I take all of these tools? And so when I do classes, like I have a class this Sunday, I'm actually picking out different aspects so that I'm making this wonderful salad. Also, the other piece is that I was lucky. I was real lucky. This is another process that's really jumping out for me. So I have a channel on YouTube now.
Nice. I was waiting for it because you've been doing so many videos, and I was like, where are they all being collected?
So let me tell you. So I'll give a shout out Eugene Mims, who was one of my college buddies 30 years ago at Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri. He's been an IT guy for American Express and all these other things. He started his own business with this other brother, Derek Blocker. Derek Blocker worked with Public Enemy, Flavor Flav, and doing some production for them. So I send this out, and Eugene hits me up. He said, John, do you want to make this go big? And he said, I see you on Facebook, man. Let us help you create this YouTube channel. And so I was like, what would that look like? And I said, well, my concept was orgasmic conscious cooking. And what I do is I cook food and talk about healthy aspects of food. Sometimes not always healthy, but good tasting food that sometimes can be healthy. Mm-hmm. People together to talk about whatever they are around food and the energy around that. And so they were like, this is kind of interesting. We don't see anybody doing this. And so I've been doing this over and over. And so I take pictures of food all the time. It's like,
yeah, you do. I love your food.
so the
The
other thing
photos,
is
I
that
haven't gotten to experience it yet, Mr. Man.
I want so soon, very soon. I promise you. I promise you. So anyway, another person, Derek said, man, you know, it's a cookbook in that too. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yep.
Said, there's a cookbook for each one of those recipes. You already have enough for one cookbook.
Yep.
He said, I need you to just go back and you just write down and you tell me, and we'll get somebody to help you out to make it where it's feasible for somebody else to use. So I was like, well, sometimes I'm going to say, just put it in a writing and we can start this.
Do you know with that, I love the idea. I don't know if you've already discussed it with them of, you know, when you have there's the book like Water for Chocolate.
Yes.
And how they have the recipes and it actually introduces some of the storylines and the plot in the book. I tore through that book, I think in like 3 days or something, maybe even shorter, because I just couldn't put it down. And a big part of it was the magic with the food. And I know we've talked about magic. I think the title of our last show together was Being Magic with You, right?
Yeah.
And so having that with the food and it being the consciousness and having little blurbs so that the food items not just invite people to have that orgasmic yumminess and in their lives and with their bodies, but also to consider certain like tools, and be it from the qigong to the martial arts to the access to, you know, all of that, the santeria. Gosh, can you imagine if there was a recipe for each of the little deities that we They would be like, that's an homage. Thank you, brother. You know, like, nom. There's so many different ways of going about it. I mean, it could be, yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. And if you ever need a taste tester, you know, I'm willing.
I'm going to get you, because one of the pieces that I'm trying to do is like, even when I go places, I'm going to cook and I'm going to record and interview people. Because like I'm going to LA next week for a foundation class. And so my granddaddy doesn't know that this at her house, I'm going to offer to cook dinner for people there.
Yeah.
Because, it gives me more footage and it's in my reality of what I enjoy doing. So
we have a huge, beautiful chef's kitchen if you want to play here.
I'm
with
waiting.
White cabinets. So you'll stand out really nicely with your dark skin. It'll be great. We'll add some color like you do.
Yes. Very, very soon. So one of the things we were talking about earlier, so one of the things that I'm realizing is that there's one more thing that I decided to do. I was in the office one day and this family came into my office and they had some younger kids. And so a lot of people like get very nervous because they're here for the older child, but the young kids like moving and going through my things. And so I have books and things. After I'll say, I'll pick it up after. Let's not worry about it. Let them do what they do. And it hit me that in some cases, my clients never had anybody read to them. And they've never really had an African-American male read to them. And one of the things that I remember being young is having so many family members, my mom, my dad, my mom's aunt would read. And it made reading really exciting. So talking to Derek and Gino, I was like, and they were like, dude, here you go with another project. I was like, let's have a YouTube channel where I'm reading consciousness books for children. So whatever that is for all different children. I was like, and they were like, yeah, but we wanted to keep that separate from the channel you're doing right now, because you can't say the words that sometimes you say like fuck or shit, or that's for kids. So I was like, yeah, I get that. So that's the other project we're working on. We're looking for books. Like I have 3 books. I talked to Dane. He wrote 2 books. I'm gonna use those 2 books. And there's another person in Portland that's writing a book. I'm trying to get David Banner's book on Black superheroes that he wrote. And what I want to do is read this on YouTube so kids can just go and a parent want them to listen to somebody reading a book.
There's a lot of them. If you want to check out maybe the Mighty Girl website, because there's a ton of books that are tailored for girls, but there are a lot of them are very empowering. A lot of stuff they talk from bullying to dating to body consciousness to they even have it by age group, by category. It's a wonderful resource. And they definitely have ones related to particular races and just international world concepts and things too. It's a phenomenal resource.
I'm gonna hit you up for that website because I really want. I need as many resources. So So
I got a couple for you, especially when it comes to kids stuff. Yeah, we'll talk.
great. So what I'm beginning to realize, being the person I am, I'm doing all these different things. My dad said, "You ever?" It's like I'm at the farmer's market doing bars.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad said, "Do you ever take a break?" I was like, and I told you earlier, I think I wouldn't know how to be if I didn't have all these projects. And what's happening is the more I'm in the chaos of the tornado of creativity, the more things get settle for me, which is just the opposite for most people.
Mm-hmm. Like there's more of a calm.
Yes, it's a calm in there for me that I know that might not there be there for others, but it's just like, and plus I'm holding down 40 hours at the county, so
Mm-hmm.
like, well, how are you doing this? Because even my position at the county's changed because I made a choice that it's going to be fun.
It makes such a big difference.
And it changes everything. So that chaos is actually creating more momentum,
Yeah.
or creativity that
Yeah.
I never thought I would be doing all this at one time.
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
And it's like, I invite people to the world of like, if you're bored, try doing 10 more things.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens.
Because the other thing with that is that part of, I think, what's draining for people when they have a lot and it's not from working with and through chaos with ease, it's they have it separate versus it's all contributing to each other. And it doesn't all have to be happening simultaneously, like at the same time. You're just aware of all of them all the time. And when something comes to the foreground, it comes to the foreground. Other stuff comes to the background. But it's still all swirling around. And then the ones that really need your energy in any given moment will light up more or will surge forward and will speak louder. And then the other ones will be more whispery. And then it just is constant dialogue energetically. And there's also organizational systems for these things. So like my Google Calendar, I'm like a walking commercial for Google Calendar and Google Keep. Like I love them. But it's also acknowledging that the contribution that all of the different creations are to you and your body, and what contribution your body is to all of
Yes.
those creations. And I know you talk about body love and body awareness a lot. And it's one of the things that I'd love to hear from you is if you could give people like one or two tools for what you do with your body to create all those things and manage all those things with more ease. I think that a lot of people who would like to create more could benefit from that, or that are in the overwhelm stage before they fully embrace having all of that kind of contribute to each other.
Yeah.
Would love to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah. So recently, I had the awareness that I wanted to have a better connection, better relationship with my body. Now, in the mid 90s, I decided to take Taekwondo for protection of my body because of the job I had as a probation officer. I
Mm-hmm.
got into physical altercation. I wanted to be able to make it really quick and simple, and I wasn't going to get hurt because I love me. So
Mm-hmm.
after receiving my black belt, I ran into my friend Bernie Baird, who started teaching me about Qigong, Tai Chi, and meditation. I stopped Taekwondo because Qigong, Tai Chi, and meditation became so orgasmic, and it allowed me to plug back in my body back into the source of the universe and expand, and it actually is the thing that I think that has kept me sane. It also it always brings me back connected to the oneness of all things living. And it allows me not to react and choose more to respond.
Mm-hmm.
Learning the processes with my body. And recently, something shifted with this that allows me to ask questions on even my food selections of what I put in my body, which Unfortunately, fortunately, it took me 50 something years to get to this point. But I have a whole different relationship with my body because of what I realized is that when I got in the cars with people, they would always turn music on, they would get on their phone, and they would distract themselves. And I was like, how many people are willing to spend at the minimum 5 minutes a day with just them and their body and start talking to their body and loving up on their body? What is it like? Most people that I know have to commute to get someplace, fortunately, unfortunately, in the US. So, but how much time of that time is spent with busy time or white noise or any type of noise that takes you away from being with your body? Somebody outside of that, how much time do they spend maybe at home meditating? It doesn't happen. The TV comes on. You start doing things, so you get distracted. So one of the things for me that I find is really, 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 really important is my walks, my meditation, my Tai Chi, and beginning to pay attention to what my body desires. This is the last factor that I did not have. And I was doing this other regimen kind of, but then I wasn't paying attention to, like, I had a checkup this week. And for the first time or ever, my blood pressure was 127, 126 over 76. My numbers were like 140, 92, 96. And the thing that changed the most is the relationship with my body now, of asking it questions. All the other pieces have given me the space. Now I'm checking in with my body. When I'm in the car, I start doing my different mantras. If somebody pulls up in front of me, yes, I say asshole, or maybe he's in a rush or she's in a rush to get someplace. It wasn't about me. Go someplace to eat. Things that might not have been chosen before, I would ask my body, you want that? And when my body says, if it keeps on coming back to it, you want that? And it's like, yeah, we want that. But I don't have to have it all the time. I don't have to eat all of it. So my relationship with my body from that experience to be able, because my meditations can last anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours in sitting. My meditation, my Tai Chi movement is about 45 minutes for the full, about probably like 33 minutes for the full session of the one Tai Chi. And in that space, I'm getting, there's a space, that's the best way I can call it. There's a space of yumminess, of where there's no separation of anything. To describe is, even though when you place your foot down and it's like, how can I walk through life? How can I show up in this space when I'm sitting with kids? So that this has become, when it's contagious for other people that I work with, because they get to feel that energy and they don't know, because sometimes it's kind of weird. And it's kind of like, first I used to be like, oh, I don't like that shit. And now I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. I'm an asshole too. People say, what type of guru are you? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I'm no fucking guru. But I realized that I've been working on my energy. So when I come into a space, the space changes.
Yeah.
And it's been for me, it's a blessing, and obviously a huge blessing for me, because I get to be really, really cosmic, orgasmically me in that space.
And one of the things that I'm getting is that it doesn't have to be from 0 minutes of meditation and Tai Chi to 45 or an hour or 2 hours.
No.
It can start off even just that, like you first invited us to, which was the 5 minutes.
Yes.
Like, start there and build up. And see what it creates for you. And if it doesn't create that spaciousness, that peace and calm, the quiet, then choose something else. Because there's many things that you just mentioned, and they can pick any of those and see whichever one is kind of pulling at them first, and then they could always add the other ones if they'd like later.
Yes. But start with, like you said, for just 5 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yeah. and if you say you don't have time, wake up 5 minutes earlier. Then set your alarm for 5 minutes early, just that as you're waking up, you start to check in with your body, check with your feet, love up on your body.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. What a beautiful
Yes.
place to end our discussion. I tell you, didn't I tell y'all? Like, oh, what a treat. Always, always, my friend. I'm glad the book's coming out soon.
Thank you.
Please
Thank you.
keep
Thank you.
us
Thank you.
posted for
For
when it's
sure.
going to be launched, when you're done writing it up and everything. You know, maybe there'll be some people that watch this that would like to contribute to your
Thank you.
awareness and the content of the book. I love
Yes.
that you're actually creating it and writing it with a lot of the youth that you've worked with. I think
Yeah.
that's very congruent with how you've been being with them your
Yeah.
whole career. But just just a pleasure per usual. Please know that it continues to be an open invitation anytime you want to come back on the show. And
Thank you.
for all of you who are watching this, if you'd like to message John, please feel free to email him directly and message him and find him on Facebook, on Instagram. Watch his Instagram videos. Check out his new YouTube channel. We will include all of that in the description below. And if you like this conversation, share it with all of your friends and go ahead and subscribe to our channel because we have even more of that coming in this season, which has been a wonderful season so far, and it's just starting. So how does it get any better than that? Thank you
Yes.
again, John. Any parting words for
Thank
us
you,
before
sister.
we leave?
Be happy. Choose it. Happiness.
Choosing it with you. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.